Hello, chameleon wranglers. This is Bill Strand, and lately we've been talking about breeding project and establishing new species in captivity and what that all takes. Well, I wanted to bring on somebody who's been involved in something like this, and that is Kevin Stanford. Some of you may recognize that name as essentially the father of carpet chameleons in captivity. He bred to the 10th generation in captivity, and this was before carpet chameleons really took off. And at this point, carpet chameleons are taking off and is a good candidate for possibly the first species to be established in captivity after panther chameleons. And so he's an exciting person to talk to. He's got a new project, and so I wanted to bring him on and talk about this just general topic. And so please join me in welcoming Kevin Stanford to the Chameleon Academy podcast. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Bill, it's been a while. How are you?
It has been. I've been doing great. We've been going through a lot of chameleon content here. And you are here because you are on the verge of creating more chameleon content. Really appreciate you doing things in the community that make me give me things to report about.
Yeah, well, hopefully I do that. I took a hiatus here for 2.5-ish, 3 years now from chameleons.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens to a lot of people is you burn out, and I had been doing it for a really long time, over 20 years, and it was not only taking a considerable amount of work, as you know, with chameleons, but it was keeping me from exploring some other reptiles and amphibians I wanted to work with.
And what did you explore?
So I kind of went off in two directions. One of them is After Your Wife, which was the Fantasticus geckos. And then the other one was frogs, specifically tree frogs, because I had worked with dart frogs and tree frogs years ago. But I like the challenging aspect of, recreating rain chambers and doing all that stuff to get them to breed, which I did for a few years. I bred some different species, and I really liked it. But strangely, their frogs were more high maintenance than the chameleons sometimes.
Wow. We actually found something that's worse than chameleons.
Yeah. And the Fantasticus are great, but they also helped me learn some things about chameleons that I was doing wrong.
Oh, really? Please share. There's a little bit of a tangent, but let's go ahead and explore that.
I think I've always been very heavy-handed with supplementation.
Okay.
I've always been one of those more is more people, and that is not the case with nature at all. And I also think I'm a lot less egotistical when it comes to reptiles than I used to be, because I had bred chameleons for a really long time, and you become a little bit protective of your projects, and I bred lateralis for 10 generations. So for someone to come in and say you're doing it wrong, I'm like, how can I be doing it wrong? No one's bred this many.
Yeah.
But looking back, I can see problems with edema. I can see problems with gout that would, especially with the quadricornis and things like that. And I think a lot of it was related to D3 and, well, basically D3, I think.
Okay.
And I really admire you and what you're doing with the community, and also a lot of the information that you've gotten out there. So I think newish comers to this hobby have really contributed a lot. So like somebody I really admire is Michael Nash. Like he's doing amazing stuff. And when I decided to get very, very slowly jump back into chameleons here, I'm not going where I did.
Yeah.
Less is more in other ways too. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to just completely not use any ego in this. I'm not going to start keeping chameleons the way that I keep chameleons. I'm going to take some information, see how it works. So I've sort of completely emulated what Michael does and what you recommend for this new project.
Yeah, it's amazing. Those of us who have been around for a while, we don't realize how much baggage we carry with us.
Yeah.
And I have been lucky to be doing this kind of show because I bring on people who have started much later. And so they're able to start with a fresh slate
Right.
with all of the latest. And it's refreshing. And I can look at what they're doing and say, okay, I'm seeing things where I still need to change. They learned how to do this by listening to my podcast, and now in interviewing them, I'm realizing
Yeah.
I didn't even realize how much baggage I had, and so it's a constant unpacking. But yeah, we can always have a new start.
Yeah.
But what is your new start?
So my new start is petteri, Furcifer petteri, which kind of goes in line with a lot of the species that I bred in the past. So obviously, Furcifer lateralis and Furcifer minor. So, it's similar in size, and morphologically they look pretty similar to each other. Obviously, lateralis is the most widespread, so it's got the most tolerance of different environments. Minor was more of a cooler area, and then petteri is sort of in between. And so I really, really liked this species for a long time. I love how the females get a really nice banana yellow color when they breed, and the blue patterns and the red head on them. And the males are nice on their own. It's just a pretty green chameleon that kind of looks like a green Furcifer minor male.
Mm-hmm.
And they're perfect size for me. Because everybody works with space contingencies, and so for me this is nice because I don't have to take up a lot of room with them. Now they have a low quota. I think it's 150 maybe.
Okay.
So you don't see a lot of them come in. Generally what you see a lot more of actually is Wilsii, which is surprising. So I had to kind of hold out for a little while before I could get a healthy pair. So, and the nice thing is, when you're not a newcomer, you know a lot of people for a long time, and they're often willing to work with you on breeding projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I got an excellent male from Jay Dubé. Gorgeous, perfect health. And then Carl Katau helped me out with a female that he had that's already laid 2 clutches for him, and she looks fantastic. And so since I've gotten them, they've bred, and she's about 2 weeks out from hopeful nesting.
Okay. Now, you've indicated that you're excited about this species and you think you would like to establish it. Now, many people who say that, they get excited about a species and then they have just a breeding pair and stuff, but and it doesn't go very far. But you have a history. You are essentially the father of carpet chameleons, and so you know how this works. And so I'd like to talk to you about what does it take to actually establish a species.
Yeah, so and I did work with, so as you know, I worked with carpet chameleons for a really long time, and I kind of held on to those for years and years until I saw somebody else taking over the project. So 2 friends of mine that helped with that were Frank Payne and Tim Marks. Once they got them established, I was able to move on to other species. So the way that, for me personally, has always been the easiest way to get a species established, because obviously you're not going to do that with 1 pair. Mm-hmm. Per se, but here's where that can lead, is getting 1 healthy clutch of eggs, and say you get a dozen eggs, you hatch them out, now you have 12 captive hatched or captive bred healthy animals. That multiplies it by a lot. It's easier generally to acclimate male chameleons. It just is. So what I would do with my strategy with carpets was I would hatch out a lot of animals, keep the females, and then pair them up with wild-caught males for new bloodline, if I was unable to source captive bred animals. So you might start out with a pair of Furcifer petteri. You might end up with a clutch of eggs, and then all of a sudden, you have a big group of them, and you can start pairing them up with hopeful success with wild caught animals or other people that are working with them. And right now, other two people that are working with them are Michael Nash, who has the most as far as clutches go right now, and then Carl. And so I'm the last to jump on here on this train.
How many people do you think need to be working with them for it to be established? And a little bit of background is right now with carpet chameleons, even though Frank Payne has taken over and is one of the greatest producers, and Tim Marks is there as well. So we now have two, I won't say mass producers, but they're regularly producing 100 or more.
Right.
But even then, I would say we don't have it established. If just one person goes down or two, then it's totally gone. It's not established. Right. What would it take to actually establish a species?
So I can't answer that because of exactly what you just said. A species can be real ubiquitous and everywhere when someone's producing it, and you get the false sense of security that it's established, and then that one or two breeders stop breeding it and they're gone. And so if Frank and Tim stop working with Lateralis, that's probably it. And they'll keep coming in as wild caught, but it's not the same thing as being established. And I do see there's a Furcifer Lateralis Facebook group that Frank runs, and there are a lot more people that are hatching them out now. But it's also one-offs. It's not people that are multi-generational breeding generally. So it's still basically Tim and Frank supplying most of them. And in the past, me, I would produce a few hundred a year probably. Mm-hmm. So I would say unless you had, you would need probably 5-10 people producing a lot to keep bloodlines going. So. Because look at Pardalis and the only two species that have ever been established, Pardalis and Calyptratus. So
and our good old veiled chameleons are pretty much at this point
almost
100% by mass breeders who are doing it for the for the pet stores, and it's not in the hobbyist community.
Right.
And so panthers are really the only ones established. But if we look into how many bloodlines, we have a lot of breeders that are sharing not a lot of bloodlines.
Right.
So
I don't even know how you would get a really good quality veiled now. I'm sure there's plenty, but they have to be so inbred at this point. And also, the new wild caught source of them is from Florida. Those aren't top quality either. They're inbred, and they're not even from Yemen and Saudi Arabia anymore. And so if you really wanted to, getting a wild caught one from their home country would be kind of, the veils are still great. They look good and all that stuff, but there are still a lot of issues.
Yeah,
and Pardalis comes in
AK-47s.
Yeah, and Pardalis has 3,000 quota a year, so that's huge. So how can you screw that up? They come in, the wild caught females lay eggs. We constantly have new sources of genetics, so that's kind of easy.
Yeah, so we have a very good situation with the Pardalis.
Right.
And for those who don't know,
it.
The reason why we don't have veiled chameleons coming in from Yemen is because there's a civil war there.
Right.
And when I say AK-47s, I literally mean you show up at Yemen and you are told to go away with an AK-47 pointed.
It's almost like they're not prioritizing our chameleon wants.
And I think that's we need to write a letter to someone. Mm-hmm. Just figure out who we're going to write to.
Yeah.
So if we have people who are excited about a species, what would be the path to success? I know most species aren't going to be able to be established because you just need a critical mass, and at this point in our community, that's that's very difficult.
Yeah,
To
and not
do.
to mention, I mean, nothing's ever changed. So, in regards to the fact that different people are going to want to focus on different species, and a lot of it is novelty species. So you can't have somebody over here saying, "I want to pair Globifur," and or not Globifur, but whatever, a Shaughnessy, and then someone over here is like, "I want petteri," and this person wants to work on varicosis. You need numbers of people concentrating on one thing, and unless a species has those things that lend it to be popular, they're probably not going to get a large group of people focusing on the same species. And Pardalis is the most popular because it's big, it's easy, and it's beautiful. So, I mean, what's not to love? So, of course, people are doing that. And it's nice because it has different locales, so you can kind of choose what color palette you want from them and stuff like that. So it's tougher with a lot of the other little species.
And so that's the future. But of course, any success is going to start with one or two people saying, "Hey, we want to try it out." And so that's the reason why I encourage anybody who wants to be serious about a chameleon. I don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years. And if we want to have the chance of having anything in 10 years, well, we got to start now. So that's why.
I mean, even with the lateralis, so, all right, there's two people breeding a lot, right? But that never was like that. My entire life growing up, that didn't exist, There was no captive bred sources of lateralis. So to me, that's a huge step forward to have hundreds of them a year available for people that want to work with the species. And to see that it's not this mysterious, hard to keep and only veileds and panthers can live type of thing. You can do that with any chameleon. You just have to give it the right care. So.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with carpet chameleons was the diapause. And you went through a complete scientific study to prove that you didn't need a diapause. And
now I've totally gone back on that.
Okay.
So it's like you don't need a diapause, and they'll hatch anyway. However, I'd use a diapause now, and I did since then. It's just a lot easier.
Yeah, and the whole scientific study was me bringing Kevin on to a podcast in the first year, saying, "But don't you need a diapause?" No.
Okay. And you did it. You did it. They hatched out, but predictability wise, diapause is the way to go.
Yeah.
And again, the reason they probably didn't need a diapause per se is because they have such a wide range and they're so tolerant of different climatic conditions compared to other ones. Kind of like, Pardalis, you can use a diapause too, but but they'll hatch without one because they're everywhere.
Yeah. So, what would you say? We have some people that are excited about certain species, and it may be just one person. It could be a couple of people together. What would your advice be to them for them to have the greatest chances of being successful?
Well, I start with your podcast. First off, if you can get captive bred or captive hatched offspring, that's obviously the way to go. And if you are really excited about a species and there's only wild caught available, that's kind of all you can do. But I know this is probably bad advice, but if you can get some gravid females, that's because a lot of times, if you get a pair, someone will end up with a male. Because, a lot of times there's failure to acclimate. So,
if you're dealing with wild caught and you can ask if any of the females look gravid, that actually is a very good way to be able to have some diversity, because if you get a pair with a gravid female, well, now you have a male to mate with what hatches.
Right.
And if you are a serious breeder or want to try serious breeding, you're the one that gravid female should go to, because if she ends up somewhere else, someone who just wanted a pet,
right,
that's going to be wasted. So,
Right,
uh,
exactly.
yeah,
Um,
I would
and
say,
now Tim Marks is finally, his Wilsey eye are hatching out. So
yeah,
that's really exciting because that was a project that was really important to him for a long time.
yep. And so
Um,
we're seeing successes around, and I know the big challenge, because I've been doing this for who knows how long, trying to encourage captive breeding and projects like this, serious projects
right,
like this. And the biggest problem is the F1 generation, selling enough of the F1 generation to make it worth continuing on the project.
right.
So, uh, yeah, I'll do my part in making sure we get the word out for any project,
Yeah.
whether it's Wilsii, Usuleti, or Petteri. I'll be
And I mean, there's such beautiful little species. I
oh
think
yeah,
selling those would actually be pretty easy. I mean, you see carpets go like that.
yeah,
I mean, there's there's more demand than there is supply for captive bred carpets, which is awesome.
yes.
And I kind of feel like just when I post a picture of those petteri, people are like, wow, because
Hmm.
you don't even realize how beautiful they can be. Um, and I mean, Wilsii is a great little species too. So I don't think, but of course, those things usually go to serious people before they get disseminated to more of the hobbyist level.
Yeah, well, that's just a stage that we have to go
Yeah.
through and to
Hmm.
make it successful. And it's good to see that we're actually making some progress towards getting these more widespread.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think certain species, it's sad when you see they don't have quite the demand because one of those that comes to mind for me is the Xantholophus. Kenyan Jacksons are incredible. The males are so amazing.
yes.
Um, and the full size ones, when you see they're not from Hawaii anymore and all that stuff. Uh, but when they have a litter of babies, you know, they say it has 20 live birth babies. First of all, they're a little sensitive for a lot of people to raise, but even when they do, the demand is really not there. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. That's an unfortunate situation, because if the cheap ones from Hawaii weren't in the market, then
right.
the Jackson's chameleon, the Xantholophus, would be one of those high value species. I
Hmm.
mean, the horns, the live birth, it's just, you take it objectively, it's just an incredible chameleon.
I'm
So,
always tempted
yeah,
when I see him too, and I'm like, nope, it's a
yeah,
distraction. I like
yes,
to I like to stay focused on what I'm going to work with long term. So,
that's good. All right, so what are your next steps?
so my next steps are hopefully to get through this first clutch of eggs. So right now it's in its infancy.
Hmm.
Um, and then try to get her producing as soon as I can again. Because I know that from working with chameleons, wild caught specifically, it's not one of those things to sit on your hands with. Get what you can while you can, as quick as you can,
Hmm.
safely and healthily for the animal, obviously. But these aren't animals that were made to take 3, 4 months off from breeding. They're animals that might live 2 years in the wild and need to make the most of the rainy season. So if you've got a healthy animal producing, get what you can so that you can get captive bred animals and start from there.
Yeah.
So that's my hope, and then my hope is that I'll produce some and then obtain more from Michael and Carl as they hatch theirs out, so I can expand bloodlines.
Mm.
And in fact, Carl bred this female to a different male. So, um, I mean, obviously they'll be half siblings, so we can't mix those. Um, but he even said, at least this is now another unrelated male she can breed with.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to follow your progress. And I wanted to do this interview to show what it's like at the very beginning of a project. And we will catch up with you in a year or so
Yeah,
and see
it's
where it
very weird
is.
to be keeping chameleons again because I
Welcome
guess you
back.
just never totally move on, do you? It's like a bad relationship. I don't, uh, but there's so much to love about them. So I appreciate you interviewing me, and always good to talk to you.
All right, then. We'll see you later.
See you, Bill.
Thank you for joining Kevin and I here. The whole subject of breeding chameleons is a complicated one, a nuanced one. There's so many different motivations for getting involved with the breeding, and when you're first starting off, it's really not that big of a deal to get too deeply into it. But if you're going to be being more serious about it, there's a little bit more thought that needs to go into it. And, of course, we will be talking a lot about all those different nuances here on the Chameleon Academy podcast. Thank you for joining me here, and I'll see you next time.